After a drunk racist man screamed slurs on the New York City subway, he was thrown off the train after getting a face full of hot soup. Hi, I'm Adam Bozarth, and welcome back to What's Trending. Be sure to like and subscribe for more of what's going viral around the web. On Saturday, a man drinking a lime-a-rita while riding the subway started using racial slurs, shouting them at a group of teenagers. And then he just kept ranting. Joshua R. Pine, who shot the video, tells Gothamist that after the man had a spat about personal space with a group of young black men, he shouted stupid N-word at the group as they got off the train. And at that point, Josh started filming.
Talk shit because I know I can, because I'm a lawyer.
There's no place for
I went to NYU Law. Fuck you!
You see, you can tell he went to NYU Law because he's drinking on the subway, which is totally illegal. And in true New York fashion, everybody gave this loudmouth bigot a chance to shut up, which he declined. The passengers did their best to ice the man out, one man literally blocking the guy's face as dumb words fell out of it.
Stop. Beat me up and show your fucking small-mindedness.
Show my small-mindedness.
I see. So this legal scholar thinks that the First Amendment gives him the right to scream racist slurs in public, but he also thinks it's closed-minded to be offended when a drunk screams racist slurs in public. Okay. But you don't need a law degree to know that if you act like an asshole, people will treat you like an asshole. The tone changes when the passengers all decide to push this man and his stuff out onto the platform.
Give me my bag! What are you doing? This person's taking my bag. That's my property. Stop trying to block my property, dude. What are you doing?
Your bag, dude.
Fuck.
And when the doors open, the man is forcibly removed from the train.
Yeah, my property. That's what's the property.
There you go.
What's the train? Dude, that's my property. Dude, that's my property.
And after throwing his lime-a-rita at the crowd, he gets a face full of hot soup. Ouch. The soup was thrown by Bronx-based rapper Princess Nokia, and she recounts her side of the story on Twitter. She writes that after the man called the group of teenage boys the N-word, she stood up and slapped him. She said, "Everybody on the train backed me up. When I slapped him, he called me the N-word, and when I did, all my brothers on the train came to my side and held my hand and comforted me. Although painful and humiliating, we stood together and kicked this disgusting racist off the train so we could ride in peace away from him." She added, "And yes, I threw hot soup in this man's face and kicked him off the train and kicked him in the face. Any other racists want to try us again?" And Princess Nokia got a lot of response on Twitter because of the story. Kimya Dawson replies, "I love you and I love New York." At Art Angel says, "This empowered me. Black women and women of color physically fighting against the violence of white supremacy and patriarchy is completely called for." New York Magazine music critic Craig Jenkins tweets, "I nominate Princess Nokia slapping out of the racist on the train for best rap activism of the week." Yes, but I think it's also tied with Eminem's appearance on the BET Hip Hop Awards.
That. This is for Colin. Ball up a fist. And keep that balled like Donald the bitch.
After the fight, witnesses said that the event took an emotional toll on the passengers. She and the larger gentleman in black embraced, and there was a good sense that social justice had been served, the videographer told Gothamist. "We, the handful of folks that had witnessed the entire event from the start, wished the man dressed in black well and hoped he'd had a better weekend." As the woman got off at Lorimer and was gone before things settled. The whole thing happened really fast. And the drunk man has identified himself on some now deleted posts on Facebook. Initially, Paul Lawson seemed remorseful, writing, "I'm getting help and I really don't know how it came up in the first place, and if it makes you feel any better, I had my head broke open the next day, so there's that." Not really. I wish you just would have stopped yelling at people on the train. But then he began arguing with commenters saying, "I'm not that sorry," adding, "I was making a point. Lots of comedians do that. It's the First Amendment, and look at the liberal mob beating up the peaceful protester now, losers." Okay, so Paul was asserting that he was peacefully protesting. But protesting what exactly? You started shouting racial slurs at a group of teenagers because they were in your personal space? So what were you protesting? And secondly, you weren't peaceful at all. In fact, you were asking people to beat you up. And Paul has been caught antagonizing people on the subway before. In May, Paul was berating a passenger on the subway for about 20 minutes, according to one witness. Paul used racial and homosexual slurs in his tirade until finally the man pushed Paul out of the train and punched him as he tried to get back on board.
Racist bastard. What do you think? What do you think? Oh, good. Yes, sir.
Paul thinks that the First Amendment gives him the right to speak like this in public. And it does. It's not illegal to say dumb and hateful things. However, that doesn't mean you're free from the consequences of what you say. If you scream racial slurs in public, people are gonna wanna punch you or slap you or throw hot soup in your face.
My property.
So what do you think of this footage? What would you do if you were caught in this situation? Let us know what you think in the comments section below. So it seems like Paul thinks people react violently to him because they're being close-minded.
Beat me up and show your small-mindedness.
But it's incredibly small-minded to think that you can go onto a subway and say the worst words that you can imagine and nobody's gonna say anything to you. Nobody's gonna tell you to be quiet or nobody's gonna get mad. But perhaps Paul knows that already. An anonymous tipster tells Gothamist that Paul is an NYU graduate, but not of the law school. They say he thrives on confrontation, although he will never take the first punch, he loves getting people to fight him. They continue, he was actually a normal human being at one point who had a good, well-paying job, but he degenerated into what you saw in the video after years of alcohol and drug abuse. He's a skateboarder, and he's been knocked out, and not surprisingly, many times. He often begs people to hit him. So there is a disturbed person out there who needs help. What resources does a person like Paul have? What are we supposed to do when somebody just snaps? So what do you think of this story? How do you stop a disturbed person on the subway? Let us know what you think in the comments. For more stories, go to whatstrending.com.